Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about why avoidants choose a specific partner. And in order to explore that, I actually want to share my story again to help illustrate it as to why I chose Carolina. So, as a former dismissive avoidant, I'm going to explore what avoidants are actually looking for in a partner. And Carolina's and my story, I think, will help illustrate that. For those of you that don't know and are new here, Carolina is my wife. We've been together for about 14 years now. And back then, in our early dating stages, we were still figuring each other out. We had breakups, it was all a bit messy. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about what I wanted as an avoidant at the time, not consciously, mind you, but what I wanted. Then I'm going to talk about my behavior relating to what I wanted. And finally, a really important component is I want to talk about what I needed. So there is this juxtaposition between what I wanted and what I actually needed. And we'll tie that all together at the end as well. So let's start by talking about what I wanted as an avoidant from a potential partner. Carolina was the candidate at the time. So the first thing was loyalty and attachment from her. I wanted her to stick to me, to only have me, for there to be no other guy in her life, because I was really desperate for her to be attached to me, to not abandon me. And me breaking up with her, I would argue today, was actually a misguided attempt at testing her loyalty, to see if she would stick around. Because in that distorted view, I thought it would prove to me that she would stick around no matter what, and that I could feel safe knowing that she wasn't going anywhere. Now, despite everything I put her through with the breakups, we did figure it out, and she was incredibly loyal, which was one of the things that made me choose her. One of the other things I was looking for from Carolina was for her to be understanding. I wanted her to listen to me, to be curious, to get to know me. And the reason for that is I had a very troubled background and a lot of shame around what was done to me. So I needed somebody that was going to have that kind of curiosity and a willingness to listen and get me and get my inner world and my often weird ways of thinking about things or doing things in an effort to get out of it, because I had this underlying fear that ultimately I was too broken to be fixed. And I needed somebody that would be really understanding to help me get out of that. Somebody that would see me for who I am and not judge me as too broken to fix and then walk away. Now, Carolina was incredibly understanding in this regard. She passed this with flying colors. And on the contrary, she really built me up. She helped me feel more confident, to help me trust myself and see the distorted view I was fed about myself due to my past and dismantle it gradually. Now, in our observation, everybody has something. Nobody has had the perfect childhood and life. But we all tend to think it's just us that are so broken when we would argue it's most people. And since everybody has to heal from something to whatever extent, helping your avoidant partner get through this is what is going to make them trust you and choose you. The next thing I was really looking for in a partner, and again, all of this was not conscious at the time, but it was patience. And Carolina had a lot of it. Because, as you will know with avoidance, they tend to have a problem with commitment. The role model I had for marriage in my parents was one of constantly fighting, no communication, very little understanding or love. It really wasn't something I wanted for myself. When I saw how they interacted over the years and decades, I concluded marriage is bad. I would never marry if that's what it means. So, working through that perception, understanding that it doesn't have to be that way, took a lot of patience from Carolina. Not to mention, I had my struggles with depression, with inactivity, getting out, being productive. So, there were a lot of areas where I felt like I had catching up to do. And again, this required patience from her side. And I'm sure in the same way, your avoidant partner, or for some of you, maybe ex-partner, has similar struggles where you have been and need to be really patient with them because things that are very easy for you, they seem to struggle with. A caveat in this that I want to add, though, is though there are areas in which you likely have more experience and understanding, and your avoidant is behind and struggling, catching up, there probably is a flip side to this to some extent, where they are ahead in other areas and have more experience, and you might depend on them or you might be learning from them. So I'm just putting that out there to not paint the picture too black and white, with the avoidant being the ultimate dysfunctional one and the anxious person being the perfect savior, because we're all people and we all have our problems, both anxious and avoidant people, that we need to work on. So these were the three things I wanted in a partner: loyalty or attachment, understanding, and patience. Again, this wasn't a conscious hunt. I didn't have a list I was checking off, but these were the things that just instinctively drew me to Carolina, that she had these traits and qualities. I think if you're watching this, there's a good chance that you yourself have some of these traits, and your avoidant does actually value those, though it might be secretly. Now, this is where it gets a bit difficult, because although Carolina had those qualities that I wanted, that I was looking for in a partner in order to choose her, and she did, to whatever extent, give me those things, that in and of itself was not enough to change my avoidant behavior. I was still rejecting, I was still abandoning, and I was still dismissive. Which brings me to how I behaved. There was essentially a double standard. I expected loyalty and attachment from her, but I had a really hard time acknowledging or admitting my attachment to her, and I initiated our 3 breakups. When it came to being understanding, I could be really judgmental and critical. One time when we were hiking in the Austrian Alps, we went all the way up, and as we were coming back down, I was really tired and I wanted to just take the train down. Carolina, however, wanted to walk down. And we had a fight about this. She got really upset, was bawling, and I was really judgmental about her being emotional about not getting what she wanted, rather than just having this discussion with her and saying, okay, what about it is so upsetting to you? I was very quick to be critical of her being emotional. And when it came to patience, I was impatient. Whenever she had a limit of some kind, I just wanted her to get over it. I didn't want her to be emotional. I didn't want her to be upset or negative, even though I was, and set this kind of absurd standard of her having to communicate her emotions as though she was Spock from Star Trek. So again, there was this insane double standard that I was imposing. Now, in my defense, I do want to say I'm talking about all the bad stuff here. It's not that I was just a bad boyfriend. There were obviously a lot of positive traits that drew and kept Carolina with me. This wasn't an insanely toxic double standard relationship. There was nuance to us. Nonetheless, this brings me to the missing ingredient in all of this that I mentioned at the beginning. There was what I wanted from her, there was my behavior towards her, the double standard, and then there was what I actually needed from her in addition to what I wanted from her. In our attachment avoidant program, we talk about this as the carrot and stick. The carrot being the love, the understanding, support, and patience, and the stick essentially being boundaries. So what I actually needed from Carolina as well was for her to challenge me on this double standard of me being abandoning, of me being rejecting, of me being so critical, and having these impossible standards of patience and understanding, where there was just no room for her to be human and emotional. So you might find that your avoidant is wanting the very things from you that they themselves cannot give, the opposite of what they are. And the reason the stick or the boundaries are so important in conjunction with providing the love and support is that there's a good chance they will have had a troubled upbringing that might have had a lot of punishment, but not healthy boundaries. So, in a way, it's a bit like resocializing someone and saying, okay, you need the love and support, patience and understanding, but you also need a firm hand sometimes. And for somebody to say, that's nonsense. You have a double standard. You are asking things of me that you yourself are either not providing or refuse to provide. And that is not okay. And in receiving both of these things in my journey, Carolina really helped me heal, but also see my own behavior and the hypocrisy in it and want to do better. I should also add, for those of you that might be watching this and saying, well, my avoidant never wants to change, they never make an effort, that all of these kinds of things really take time. Human behavior is complex and very layered. And you need repeated exposure to somebody challenging you and calling you out to really implement change in your character that is fundamental. Because you might have seen these short bursts of them saying, I will change and I can do this. And there's like a week where they're on better behavior, but then they default back. And something we really like to stress is this is normal. You really have to expect people to default to their typical behavior. And it's an ongoing process of calling them out and supporting them over months, sometimes years, depending on how deeply rooted this issue is, where they will then finally actually change, where the new default becomes the thing you need for your needs to be met. So to just summarize that a little bit again, there were the things I wanted from Carolina that would make me choose her as my partner. There was my contradicting behavior towards her, where I wasn't giving her the very things that I was demanding from her. And then there were the things that I needed from her that were more about confrontation and calling me out. And that whole package is what really made me choose her. Because had she just been the first, the giving and understanding, that wouldn't have been everything I needed. And in the same way, your avoidant also needs these boundaries. They need to see that you can and will stand up to them. And if you are just endlessly giving and patient, which is a trait we often see with anxious people, there's a certain dishonesty towards your avoidant coming from yourself because you are upset. You are maybe even resentful and angry that they have this double standard, that they are not coming through the way you are for them. And this is where the stick, the confrontation, and the boundaries is so important. So it's the whole bundle together that really makes an avoidant choose you and also change for you. So if you're interested in learning more about this carrot stick technique, we break it down in our attach and avoidant program where you can learn how to implement this properly step by step. I'll drop it in the video description. Be sure to check it out. And if you've stuck around this far, thank you for watching. And you'll probably be interested in watching my other video, Why We Avoidants Won't Admit We Are Attached to You. Thanks guys, and see you next time.